I just hadn't seen you.
I know. Y'all, we've been talking. This is Bryn with the Mama on the Rocks with Miranda Connor. And she's just one of my favorite experts, but also a good friend. So we were just catching up here before we got on here with you guys. So something that's come up recently, Miranda has talked to us about. She is EMDR certified. She has her LPC. She's basically got every letter possible. She has a whole acronym by herself. But Miranda has a long history of working in juvenile detention facilities. She's currently leading the Adventure program, which is an addiction recovery program that works with the school systems from a mental health perspective, which is so awesome. And so we've had a lot of questions come up recently because we've got more mamas in our group that have older kids, tweens and teens, about just kind of like, hey, I'm worried that my kid is going to end up in the system. My kid is going to end up catching a charge. My kid is going to end up addicted, all of these things. And if anybody's read any kind of anything, you know that the sort of odds are stacked against us when we're raising extreme children, because each one of those diagnoses carries with it a certain percentage of increase in things like high risk behavior, suicidal ideations, that kind of thing. And so I thought it was really timely to get Miranda on here to talk to us about what are some sort of red flags that we should be looking for, because she's worked with this population for so long. So Miranda, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. Talk to us a little bit about the population you're working with right now.
Okay, thank you, Bryn, for having me. So right now I am the site director for the Adventure program in Johnson City. It is an adolescent substance abuse intensive outpatient program. So we do Monday through Thursday, kids are on site 8 to 3:15, and then on Fridays it's 8 to 1:15. We do have school integrated into our program, as well as they have the traditional IOP, 3 hours of group therapy. We have an hour of recovery skill building group, and then we also have, block for school. They eat breakfast and lunch at our site. And so all of these kids, well, I'll say 99%. So I will never use all, because I try not to use those, extensive, but are at risk of being placed at a higher level of care for their substance use. So that's our only criteria for my kiddos. They have to have a substance use disorder. 100% have co-occurring issues. So they already had a mental health diagnosis. We see, probably our most common diagnoses is ODD. Or conduct disorder, but we see kids that are on the autism spectrum. We have kids that have major depressive, PTSD. I mean, just pretty much the whole gamut of things. We have kids that, have been in the system, that are in DCS custody. We have kids that are, parents drive them every day and pick them up and pack their lunch, right? So we see the whole broad spectrum of what adolescent substance use looks like. And I will tell you, and one of the reasons that our Sister Hearts connect is that advocacy piece. One thing that breaks my heart, and I'm trying to teach my babies at the facility, is about being an advocate for substance use, because I will tell you, when I tell people what I do, they suck their teeth and it's like, ugh, I don't know how you do that. I'm like, how do I not?
Yeah.
So I tell my kids all the time, like, I have that motto of like, if not me, who? But like, people don't get uncomfortable talking about kids using substances, and so then they're like, oh, I bet they just smoke weed. No, we are getting kids that are IV methamphetamine users, that are opiate users, that have tried heroin, they're alcohol users. So like, and people get really uncomfortable, and I think that might be a contributing factor, especially for our parents that are interested. Is like, there's not a lot of great information, because people want to pretend that this issue doesn't exist, but it is right out there in our community. And we would rather, we have taken this stop using drugs are bad mentality, and instead of really looking at what are the deeper mental health issues that are going on that are causing our babies to cope by using substances, because it is unfortunately societally very like celebrated. Almost. If you watch a rap video, or when I used to teach the substance use group at residential, I think the statistic, and that was just like 2 years ago, 78 times our kids hear some kind of positive drug reference a day.
Wow.
And so I would joke that if you've listened to Future's Mask Off, you heard all 78 in one song, right? So, so we talk about that, the societal piece of that. This is so praised, and if you are like not on your kids' TikTok or on their Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, you need to get on there, mamas, because that is exactly where they're seeing this. Like you kids are, posting videos of them smoking or drinking. They're requesting or making transactions for substance use on Snapchat. So this stuff is right in our face. But again, we would rather kind of close our eyes than get uncomfortable, and that breaks my heart.
Yeah, and I think like, it's easy for us, and I'm always going to be the one, and I know Miranda, you're this way too, that's going to call attention to sort of the obvious that people are uncomfortable about. We're both white women. We can sit here and joke like as middle-aged white mamas like about rap videos and da 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 da, but we have mamas that are like, well, my kid's a nerd and we're nerds and whatever. Well, guess what video games say, honey? So you need to be looking at what those video games are showing your kids. Are they watching YouTube? What's just kids YouTube? Okay, what was it, last year that there was a suicide challenge of things that were doing pop-ups and it was on kids YouTube?
Yes. And there's pornography on YouTube,
yeah.
kids. Like, ladies, get with it. Like, and if you think so, I mean, my test, because my kiddos teach me daily at my program. If you ask your kid if they know who Pooh Shiesty is, then girl, bye. They already know. It doesn't matter if they're a nerd or a prep or whatever else.
Yep.
This is being celebrated, and they're seeing these people with, $100 bills on them, and automatic machine guns, and they're using drugs and they're promoting drugs. So it doesn't matter what you think your kid looks like, because we have kids, again, that look like I mean, you would never think in a million years this kid is using. And that is why I think that, our parents were like, oh, it can't be that.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're such a good kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then they take a drug screen and they're popping hot for multiple
Every
substances.
time when I would teach high school and I would hear a mama say, oh no, my kid would never do that, I said, okay, let's just, you walk in here with me when I'd give him his drug screen. Then when I was the manager of the group home, and I'd be like, go ahead and just sit here and watch, because this is what happens. So I think you mentioned it, advocacy and education. That's the first step, I think. And my husband teaches me he makes fun of me because I'll be sitting, he listens to rap music. I love it. I'll be sitting there bebopping along, singing every word, having no idea what I'm even saying. And he'll just bust out laughing at me and be like, babe, do you know what you just said? And I'm like, no, translate please. And he tells me, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But you got to ask these questions. So find somebody that knows, get you a urbandictionary.com, do what you got to do to figure it out. But do not be so obtuse as to think it can't be my kid, because it absolutely can.
Absolutely. Well, and so that could be the great start, Brian, of like, if you're not sure, like, find out what your kid is doing, and don't just be the mama that's like, turn that mess off. I talk to them about, hey, I want to learn more about this.
Yeah.
I'm so blessed that I am surrounded by young people that absolutely love sharing information with me, because I'm a listening ear. So I come up, then tell me more about this. And they know Miss Miranda will never be judging you. So I'm like, tell me more about this. What is it that you like about this, singer or this activity or whatever it is? So I'm listening to the music with them. And so, because I'm wanting to know more. And so when we have that curiosity for our kiddos, we can then find out. So then I'm asking them, like, what does this mean? And they are very open to me, hey, here, what is this? We'll put on the lyrics video so that I can even like read it, because some of it you can't even understand. But tell me, what does that mean for me? They will share it with you if you are open and willing to have that conversation. You can't freak out immediately, but being able to have that conversation. Because I'll be honest with you, I can't tell you how many kiddos that I have conversations with, and they already know if they're talking to me, Miss Miranda's at some point in time going to ask me if I'm thinking about hurting or killing myself today. And I use the K word. Oh my goodness. But that my kiddos say that they've gotten in trouble, or their parent has responded very like negatively to them when they've shared thoughts that sort of seemed suicidal, and that they have the thoughts. They just ain't going to tell you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that's the same way, is that we have to be so mindful of how we respond to what our kiddos are telling us, because if we put up, or we, become negative, or we, judgy, or make a snide comment, our kiddos, that doesn't stop the behavior. They're
Nope.
just going to make sure we don't see it.
Yep. And that's
Um,
when it gets really dangerous. You mentioned co-occurring, and I think that's super important. As somebody who is currently counseling adult male sex offenders, I get the same reactions. People think that I'm crazy for working with this population. I actually love what I do, and there ain't people lining up. Uh, so I know you and I, before we started this recording, we're kind of talking about having some of that overlap, and that is a huge thing, especially with some of the diagnosis we see in our group a lot, where those high risk behaviors include drugs, alcohol, and sexual promiscuity. It might be just exploration. It might be, hey, I heard about this. It might be, I live in a podunk town and everybody says there ain't nothing to do, so they're just sleeping with everybody. And I'm telling you this as a former high school teacher and somebody who works with sex addicted population. You need to understand when I say, I just told people last week, we had the talk with our 9-year-old and they about died. They about dropped dead. He is only 9. I said, yeah, we should have had the talk probably sooner. But there were we always answer questions, but there were some things that came up and I was like, all right, we need to have this talk. And it was really mind blowing to a lot of people at that age. But here's the thing, where else are they going to hear about it? So talk to us about some things, and I'm talking about any age, mama. So I don't care if your baby is 4, I don't care. What are some things that kids might be saying that we as parents need to be like, oh, wait a second, that might be sexually related, or that might be alcohol, substance abuse related?
So any kind of, again, it's so imperative, learning slang terms, because kiddos see more than we know. I have been in an assessment for, and a 3-year-old picked up a dinosaur and put it to their arm and said, oh, that's something that they they saw. Um, the TV is another big piece. But we don't hear kids talking about substance use, or any kind of sexual behavior, and them saying the actual words that we think. So there is all kinds of, and goodness forbid, I probably could pull up like a whole list of things that I hear that I'm like, I have no idea what that is. Sexual things, I mean, goodness knows, several years ago it was like a bracelet challenge, right? So you got a bracelet of certain colors based on a sexual act that you had done. There's lots of acronyms on texting. I mean, if you're not monitoring your kids texting, like, girls, you need to take the kid's phone away. I mean, that's if you don't see what they're doing, because they could, I mean, it's so different. So I would almost be afraid to say what you might be. I know behaviorally I can tell you what we might look for, but I mean, it changes every day, but that's why we got to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, what do you know? What questions do you have? And we've got to be able to go in there again. If we want to freak out afterwards and go boohoo in the shower, let's do it. But let's be a calm, stable place for our kiddos in that moment to say, hey, I'm really interested, and this is because I care about you, and these are important questions. One of the biggest pieces, that regardless of whatever the negative interest is, they all of a sudden start losing interest in things they used to really enjoy. So maybe they were playing softball and now they're like, I want to be off the team, right? They start breaking rules, but it doesn't even have to be big stuff. It may be like minor oversights. And they're maybe used to be a kid that we would maybe look over, oh, they're just having a hard. No, let's be paying attention if something like that happens. They all of a sudden are not hanging out with old friends, but they have a new peer group that they've started hanging out with. Any kind of drastic shifts in their mood. So maybe they're being a little bit more mopey. Maybe they're more agitated or irritable, or even we're seeing aggression. So they're starting to hit stuff, throw stuff, be like super snippy. And any changes in their sleep. So we notice babies staying up later. We notice that they're sleeping more. Those can all be like mega, like in our face. Even things like avoiding eye contact. Maybe they used to be a kid that sat down with you and told you about how their day was, and now they're like, it was good.
Yeah.
Even those slight subtles, and we live a busy, life and society where we have kind of like promoted, you run it till the wheels fall off. But us purposely taking time to notice and not be so caught up in the hustle that we're not paying attention to these little small signs, because it never goes from our kid is, perfectly fine one day and they're an IV meth user. Like, that's not how that works. There is a gradual uptick, but we have to pay attention. Things like staying out later than normal or being places they aren't supposed to be. Again, checking in where your kids are. I have Life 360. Where the heck's my kids? If my kids are going somewhere, we share Snap locations, and I'll send them a message, send me your location, like, and check in throughout the time. They also start acting irresponsible or come across money or are asking for money more than usual. I can tell you, the mamas that I speak with in our program, that kiddos all of a sudden start having money. They all of a sudden have a cell phone that mama doesn't know where it's at. And I'm like, why aren't you asking these questions, right? Because kiddos like working, fast food, and all of a sudden they've got several $100s. Maybe stealing things.
Yeah.
So maybe even small things that can be a big issue. Locking bedroom doors or making secretive contacts. So maybe they're on a FaceTime, and then as soon as you walk in, they're, shutting it off. They're starting to be more isolating, or, again, just changes in their interactions. A huge thing's going to be what their academic performance change. And I mean, I'm not saying like it has to go from like A to F, right? But even a kid that's like a steady C that all of a sudden's failing or getting zeros on stuff, they're becoming more resistant to any feedback from you. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to take your cell phone, they get very agitated. But even, again, things of, and all of those things could go, whether it's sexual behavior or, because again, they're doing something they're trying to hide. Now, if you want to go deeper, even for substance use, and again, any of you mamas, if you want to reach out to me, we can have deeper conversations. I appreciate the ones that reach out to me, on the regular, asking me things about EMDR. But changes your kiddos' hygiene, massive. Even changes in their smells. And I'm sorry, but from the day my babies is born, I know what my babies smell like.
Yep.
And so very different shifts in smell, because lots of our substances, to include marijuana and methamphetamine, that you can smell those, and you can smell them coming out of your kids' pores when they are sweating. They don't care about their appearance, so they're wearing sloppy stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, to the point of what they're wearing, I think in our minds, and there is a generational difference, so we have to recognize that, right? And so we think, oh, our daughters are going to start wearing low-cut tops and mini skirts. Come on. Like, they're not going to shoot for a rap video. Like, it's not all that. And so, yes, maybe they're wearing stuff underneath, or they're wearing layers, or they're sneaking clothes. Certainly check their backpack. But a lot of times it's them carrying less. They're not doing their hair anymore. They're wearing baggy stuff, especially if it has progressed to a point where they're considering intravenous use. They're going to wear sweatshirts when it's 90 degrees outside, because they don't want you to see that. Like, they're tricky. So you need to be paying attention to the little stuff.
Yep. And mamas, let me tell you, I'm about to break your heart. We have gangs around here. I know that we hear people all the time, there is not. Yes, there is. We currently have a significant amount of gang affiliated youth that come through my program. And so, and the things that I have learned from them, between them and the detention center is profound. So it's paying attention. So it could be your kid is wearing regular clothes, but you notice their color changes. So there's a specific, gang in our area currently that they wear black. So, as a mama, I wear black all the time because it's slimming, right? But just noticing those shift changes in like the type of colorful, maybe they used to be more colorful, now they're not. And we're like, oh, they're just going through a goth phase. No, that could be so much other stuff.
And look up and educate yourself on, like, it's very easy to look up things about gang symbols. I've, of course, because of residential stuff, been through big trainings, but you don't have to go through something with your police department to look for certain 5-point crowns mean something. Like, there's certain things. So if you notice they're starting to get graphic tees that have very similar things on them, you need to pay attention to that.
Yep, absolutely, because it's not always the tattoos. Some of my most affiliated youth are completely clean of tattoos because they're more of a recruiter. So they want to be inconspicuous. So being mindful of that. But especially the eyes, right? So bloodshot eyes, glazed. Maybe their pupils are dilated. those kinds of things, like being noticing of that, any changes in their behavior. So they all of a sudden are like super energetic, or again, they're very tired. Even, and again, changes in their mood, even to the point of like paranoia, or irritability. They seem to be more anxious, because I don't care what anybody says, marijuana does not positively improve your anxiety. Get out of my face.
Mm-hmm.
But they're more anxious. They worry about things they used to not. Sores at all. Okay. And that, methamphetamine, we think about that a lot, but again, that can be from lots of different things. Um, any kind of swelling, puffy face, any changes in their like dental hygiene, those kind of things. And these are things that having a conversation with our kiddos, hey, like, what's going on with you? Something's up.
Okay, so as we're getting close to time, let's say we've noticed one or two of these things, but we haven't just historically, let's say we've got a kid that's 10, 11, 12, 14 years old. In our household, we have not spent the time to create a safe place for them to come and talk to us, and we're aware of that. What do we do? We've noticed some of these things. What do we do with that?
We got to own up to what we haven't done and say, look, you know what, I want to have a conversation with you. I know like I haven't been this
Mm-hmm.
very open parent, or I'm worried that I haven't created the space that, you can talk to me about anything, and just start some of that connection, saying, do you have anything to tell me? I'm worried. What can I do? How can I support you? And then let your detective hat come on and start paying attention. What do we need to do? Because as the behaviors are more, then there are different resources that you can then put in. So obviously starting even at an outpatient level of therapy, because they can then make referrals to other
Yeah.
things. There's programs like mine. Most of our kids are not one-time user substance uses. So like if you're thinking about don't pull them into mine, because they'll probably come out worse than what they were coming in. But there are programs like mine, whatever we can do to keep them in our community. That's what we're hoping. That's my every day I wake up, how can I keep my babies in the community? Because I'm so tired of losing babies to the system. So but reaching out, you can always message me, or Brian, or say, hey, this is what's going on. She'll get you connected to somebody in the network so that we can help guide you, because this is a tough thing for mamas and babies. But I mean, it's one of those, even if you need help having that conversation, using a therapist, help.
Yeah, and I love that you said owning it, and that's something that I don't care who you are, like, and I don't care who you're talking to, but I say this all the time, and I've written about it and talked about it. Like, you have to, like, your kids are people too. I don't care if they're 3 and 4 years old. It goes a long way to admit that you did something wrong and ask them for their forgiveness. Like, look, I was scared. I was afraid to talk to you about this. Or even maybe you have a history of using and you have been like, I will never tell my kid that. Maybe you need to think about that. Like, listen, I've been through part of this, or I watched my so and so go through this, and so I was scared to tell you, and here we are, and I'm being honest, and I would appreciate if you had anything to share with me. Like, I will listen. I'm not trying to call the cops. Like, prepare a safe space, but understand, and I cannot stress this enough, and I know Miranda, you'd echo this too, as somebody who would to the death fight you for our babies. Don't threaten something you're not going to follow through on, and don't promise something you're not going to follow through on. So don't say, this is between me and you, I'm not going to involve the law, and then they tell you something your heart wasn't ready for, and before you know it, here you got the deputy sheriff at your door. Don't do that, because that is the opposite, and they won't come back to you anymore. You've blown that. So make sure that you're prepared, kind of heart, body, and soul, before you go in there for what you would hear, and how, even if you have to say, I don't know how I'll react, but can we process this together? Because
Absolutely.
they'll surprise you. I'm telling you, they will surprise you at how mature they can be, at whether they want help or not. And that's a big thing. If they're not ready for help, then you can tell me all day I need to lose weight, but if I want to eat cake, go ahead and try to stop me. Like, it ain't happening. So you have to kind of understand that you're raising human people that are going to mess up. So if they're already in that cycle, be prepared when you go in for what you might hear in there before you just
And
go.
I get more mamas that are regret involving the legal system. Like, and I'm not saying that there aren't times that you need to.
Sure.
But that's our knee jerk. Let's go. Again, I had to turn away a family this week from my program. Baby had just used one time, and they're like, "Oh, we're trying to put you in." And
Mhm.
I'm like, "I absolutely will not allow your child to be here. Like, they do not meet criteria. This is not in their best interest." And they were angry at
Mhm.
me. But again, we've got to get in touch with what's really going on. And
Yeah.
cannot speak enough for, we do not have to model perfect behavior to our kids, because what we actually do is model unrealistic expectations,
Mhm.
because we are humans and we get upset. And so when we can do that in healthy ways and
Yeah.
say, wow, I'm really stressed, let me show you how I deal with it,
Yeah, for
instead
sure.
of, oh, I have to be perfect all the time, and then babies go to bed and we're tore to shreds and we're whatever. No, we need to model that for our kids and say, look, I don't know what to do, but let's, like you said, do it together. But involving our kids in planning, imperative. Every one of my babies is involved in their treatment planning
Yeah.
in my program. What do you want? What do
Mhm.
you want to gain? And you would just be so surprised, the changes and the shifts that happen when you empower young people to, instead of just underestimating, empower them to be great. They will meet your expectation every single time.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize that. You mentioned ODD and conduct disorder. You see in that a lot. And I'm sure ADHD is prevalent. I'm sure DMDD is prevalent. Like all of that, we get it. Like all of our kids have this. So that being said, if you have parented them for more than 5 seconds, power struggles are useless. Like they are not your friend. And so threatening these types of kids by saying like, oh, I used to get, when I managed the group home, I would get calls legit, y'all, daily. Like, my kid is da da da. I'm bringing them down there so they can see what they don't want to be a part of. I'd be like, skirt, no. Because first of all, you think they've never seen like 60 Days In. You think come on. And
Mm-hmm.
scared straight, they already know. And it doesn't phase them because it's not real to them.
Yeah.
And so I don't have an overnight program where they can come and have a sleepover. That's not how this works. And so it's important that we don't threaten them. And again, going back to that follow through piece, like not saying, and like you said, I'm glad you said it, there are certainly times where you need to involve the law or you need to have some sort of backup resource. Absolutely. You need to keep yourself and the other people in your household safe. However, be sure you know going in, how am I going to handle this? And if I hit a situation where I don't know how to handle it, do I trust myself and my child enough to say, I don't know what to do? Can we talk through this together? Because I promise you, it never has ever worked in history to try to scare a kid out. They think they're invincible. Like you were 17 once, right? You remember that you thought you could do whatever and there wouldn't be consequences that were real because you were a kid. And so I think, just kind of summarize, like educating yourself is arguably the biggest piece because it could be right in front of your face and you absolutely are oblivious. Asking questions, involving your kid, like don't have some secret spy mission, like maybe get a couple of words in your head so you know what this means, but then ask them. And then also owning up. If you've blown it and they're already in their teenage years and you know something's going on and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want them to get arrested. What do I do? You need to go to them and say, look, I know that I have blown it, or whatever that looks like for you. Like, I'm sorry that I have not made you feel safe, or I'm sorry that you've gone through this trauma and I wasn't there, or whatever that looks like, and say, I'm here for you and I would like to listen. And then guess what? You shut up and you do that.
Absolutely.
Theater.
Absolutely. And even starting the conversation, I'll tell you, I do it with my kids all the time, and they're like, Mom, you're killing us, right? But when I learn a new word, I'm coming home and at dinner, I'm like, do you guys know what this means? And I'll just like throw it out there. It's a slang term. And then they're like, really, Mom? And I'm like, no, I'm just wondering, because it gives you a great like temperature check of like what it
Yeah.
is. But so even for me, as somebody who hears it all day, it felt different when my kids knew. And I'm like, oh, am I so oblivious? So having that time and that conversation, I will also tell you guys, which again, I know kids with extreme, like we don't want to eat. I try to eat lunch with my babies at least a couple times a week at my facility, but at home, you eating dinner as a family, I don't care if you were sitting on a towel in the living room floor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you eat dinner as a family, you significantly decrease your child's risk of being an alcohol or substance user or even a cigarette smoker
Mm-hmm.
just by having family dinners together. So that's profound.
Yeah.
putting the phones down, putting the devices down, and spending some time talking. That
Yes.
is your number one defense about this is your relationship with your kids.
I love that. Oh, I love that. All right, so Miranda's already said, but if you have specific questions, if you've seen a certain thing in your kid and you feel free to reach out to me. Absolutely. Bryn, BRYNN at themamaontherocks.com. If I don't know, I will connect you with Miranda. Miranda is in our group. She's a group member, so you can actually message her on there. I've seen some more of you doing live videos. Do that. Jump up, like get in there. If you want to, and I'm just going to throw this out there, your kid's at school and you're going like, hey, somebody that can help me. I'm walking in their room and I'm seeing this and this. Please, somebody tell me what this is. Like, that's what we're here for. This is a totally private group. Ain't no cops in here, right? And that's what we're here to do. So utilize it. Utilize this village to support you and to help you. Miranda, thank you so much just for everything about you. But specifically, this is a hard conversation, but it is so crucial and could be life-changing and could save lives for our kids.
I'm hoping. Thank you for having me. And like I said, message me any questions you guys have. I'm sure I'll see you soon anyway.
All right, I'm going to talk to you soon. See ya.
Yes. Thanks.